While visiting my son's grave, a figure made of braided starlight stepped between rows of names and told me something I didn't know a heart could survive hearing. If you've ever stood over a piece of ground that holds everything you used to be and felt like gravity suddenly became personal, you know the particular emptiness I'm talking about. I came for silence. I came to rearrange the flowers my wife brought last week that the wind had knocked sideways, to say the usual things parents learn to say when there's nothing left to fix and the air doesn't argue back. Instead, a presence leaned into the exact frequency where breath turns into prayer and said my son's nickname in my head, exactly the way I used to say it when he missed the curb and caught himself laughing, half warning, half praise, all love. Teo. The next 17 minutes rewired what I believe about death, memory, and where love goes when there's no body left to carry it. This is not a sermon written by someone who found comfort in scripture. It's a field report from the thin place between marble and sky, verifiable, practical, documented with the kind of proof that makes skeptics sit down and shut up. If you've ever begged the air for a sign and then hated yourself for needing one badly enough to sound crazy, stay. You will get 3 pieces of evidence you can hold in your hand. If you've ever wondered whether cemeteries are just sad, or if they're thick with messages we were never taught to read, stay. You will learn the alphabet the departed use when they can't write letters. And if you've ever thought that grief was a wall you either climb over or die against, stay. There's a door. The story you're about to hear shook me not because it was dramatic with thunder and lights, but because it was precise. The exact word my son left behind, tucked where only a father's hands would look. The exact sound the wind made in the pines, as if it were learning to speak English just for this conversation. The exact way my keys went light in my hand when the guardian taught me how the departed get our attention without breaking the laws of physics. Take a breath. We're going to the place where names carved in stone and light braided from other dimensions learn each other's shapes. It was a Tuesday in late April that pretended to be spring, but kept one hand in winter's pocket just in case. The cemetery sat on a hill in the Blue Ridge foothills that had been a dairy farm once, back when cows decided where the good grass grew and farmers followed their votes. You could still feel the old fence lines under your feet if you walked slow enough, the way the ground remembered being divided into pastures before it learned to hold names instead. My son's stone is 4 rows in from the east gate, 3rd maple on the right, the red one that goes loud every October like it refuses to apologize for taking up space with beauty. Mateo Reyes, 9 years and 4 months. A dash between 2 dates, 2014 to 2023, that holds a universe I can't carry without setting it down every mile or two to catch my breath and remember how knees work. I wiped the face of the marble because spring pollen in North Carolina is a yellow conspiracy and nothing stays clean for more than 3 days. I fixed the toy dump truck that keeps falling off the northwest corner, no matter how carefully I position it. The ground settles, or maybe the earth is restless, or maybe my son is still 9 and 9-year-olds don't like things to stay perfectly arranged. I told him about Luna, the dog, refusing to sleep on my side of the bed unless I leave the bedroom door open exactly 1 inch. She's apparently more spiritual than me, which isn't saying much, but also isn't nothing. I told him about the fabrication shop, about the new apprentice learning to run a plasma cutter, like he was born with steady hands, and something to prove to a father who doesn't call anymore. I told him about the word again that I taped under a dinner plate, and how some mornings it saves my lungs from forgetting their job. I told him his mother planted tomatoes, even though we both know she'll forget to water them by July, which means I'll water them and pretend I'm not doing it for him. Then the wind changed, not strong enough to call it a gust, not cold enough to make me zip my jacket. It shifted direction like it remembered a promise it made to someone I couldn't see. The stand of white pines on the far fence line started to whisper, a sound I'd heard 10,000 times on 10,000 visits, and never once registered as language until that exact moment when it picked up syllables my bones recognized before my brain could translate them. I looked up from the stone expecting clouds or a hawk or nothing at all. A figure stood 3 rows back, where there hadn't been anyone 3 seconds before. I know because I'd counted every person in the cemetery when I arrived. 2 groundskeepers near the maintenance shed, One older woman sitting on a bench with a rosary, one jogger cutting through like the dead don't mind the disrespect. This was someone else. Something else. 7 feet tall if height still matters in a world where geometry was doing things Euclid never voted for. The shape was man-adjacent, but composed of intersecting lines of light that braided and unbraided like a basket, weaving itself in real time. The face wasn't a face in the mugshot sense. It was a cluster of facets that kept rotating through configurations, each one choosing to look at me and settling just long enough for recognition to build a foothold before shifting again. I didn't run. My feet remembered I used to be a soldier before I was a welder, and soldiers don't run from things that might just be heat stroke until they're sure. The figure didn't ask me to believe in it. It simply said, inside the exact place where love builds sentences out of breath, "You can call me Thamiel." Then it said my son's nickname, Teo, exactly in the cadence I used to put on it. When he handed me a rock he swore was a meteorite, and I pretended to authenticate it with a jeweler's squint. Downbeat, then lift, skepticism dissolved by affection. Teo. My truck keys in my right hand went lighter, not as if I'd dropped them, but as if metal had suddenly remembered it was an idea before it was a thing. "Prove you're not just my brain being kind because it's tired of being cruel," I said without preamble or hello or sir, because manners are for encounters that make sense. The figure pointed, without pointing, more like directing attention through pure will, at the underside of the stone's base. Left side taped. I dropped to one knee like I was checking a tire and reached under the marble ledge where moss grows in the shade. My fingers found a strip of blue painter's tape I absolutely did not put there. I pulled it free. Wrapped inside, a paper star folded from yellow notebook paper, the kind with 3 holes punched on the left margin. We'd folded a whole galaxy of these last summer during a power outage, competing to see who could make the sharpest points. On this one, in his handwriting, the 9-year-old cursive that looked like it was trying to run away from the baseline was written, "Look up, Papa." I did. The sky was the same blue it had been 5 minutes ago, and completely different. Same wavelength, different depth, as if it had been layered this whole time, and grief had compressed my vision into 2 dimensions until that exact second when a dead boy's handwriting and a cosmic stranger's timing forced the depth back into focus. My throat made a sound I don't have a word for. "Okay," I said. Keys still lighter than they should be, voice shaking like rust on a hinge. "Teach me. Fast. I've got 30 minutes before I have to pick up his mother from physical therapy, and I need to know where my son is." "You came asking a question," Thamiel said, and the voice, if you can call direct transfer of meaning into your chest cavity a voice, was patient the way mountains are patient. "Under the flowers, under the updates about the dog, under the rage you're too tired to scream, you came with one question." I nodded because shame doesn't help anything when you're talking to geometry that knows your son's nickname. "I want to know where he is," I said, hands on my knees like I'd just finished a sprint. Not a poem, not a metaphor about stars or gardens, a place, coordinates if you've got them. The Guardian's edges softened, not to make itself less strange, but to make me more capable of handling strange without my nervous system staging a walkout. "He is in communities, not coordinates," it said. "Locations organized by purpose, not longitude, and you can visit by widening, not walking." It stepped back, again without feet, just a repositioning of presence, and the path between rows shifted into something that was still grass and stones, but now had a tension laid into it like a track you follow. Not with eyes, but with agreement. "You're not leaving your body," Thamiel added, sensing the father in me ready to fight physics on principle, and the welder in me ready to call bullshit on anything that doesn't require a tape measure. "You're expanding the part of you that already knows how, the part that hears him in the wind before you talk yourself out of it." I took a breath that surprised me by arriving without asking permission. "Will it hurt?" I asked, because 9 years of bedtime rituals taught me to ask about pain before we start the procedure. "No," it said. "It will ache. Ache and hurt are cousins, but they work different jobs. This is the ache of remembering you're bigger than the envelope of skin you've been mailing yourself in." On the first step, the cemetery went quiet without going silent. Birdsong didn't stop. It moved behind a veil where music grows before it decides to be notes you can hum. The groundskeepers kept working, but their shovels made a sound like meaning being planted. "You will want proof," Thamiel said without contempt, without the tone people use when they think you're being small. "Good. Proof is a kindness to frightened minds, not a failure of faith. We'll gather some." We passed a stone with a hand-carved baseball glove and a penny balanced on top of the granite, head side facing east. I noticed without knowing why I noticed. "You'll tell his mother about the penny," the Guardian said, tracking my attention. "She will say her father used to do that for luck. Heads east, always east, because that's where light remembers to start over. Then she will cry in the way that isn't ugly. It's irrigation. Her father's been dead 12 years and she thought no one else knew that language. I filed the detail in the drawer where I keep things that will matter when I'm not being crushed by adrenaline." "Why me?" I asked, not as complaint but as a mechanic asking why this particular bolt keeps stripping when the others hold fine. "Because you asked out loud with your hands," Thamiel said, glancing at the flowers I'd aligned, the truck I'd repositioned, the habit I have of pairing things that don't need pairing. "Because symmetry is the only prayer I know how to build." "Because you brought bread last time. Just a roll from the shop, nothing fancy. And left it on the bench and 3 crows taught you how altars actually work when they ate every crumb without arguing about theology. Because you didn't come here for a haunting. You came for instructions. And instruction is my jurisdiction." We stopped under the red maple that always errs on the side of too much color, as if it learned from my son that apologies for taking up space are a waste of good breath. "There are places you can understand on a first visit," Thamiel said, "and places that need you to learn a language first. We will go to the ones that translate cleanly." The air did the thing where it doesn't shimmer, but your attention does, and the cemetery was still there, but also a field was there, occupying the same location through a grammar I didn't have words for yet. The field looked like wheat from far away and like light up close, golden stalks that turned into beginnings when you touched them, as if potential had learned agriculture. "Field of First Light," the Guardian named it, because names are handles and fathers need handles when the floor disappears. "He runs here because running is the first way children learn they are not the ground." I saw him, Tio, knees high, hands loose, that little forward lean kids with good ankles have when they're about to laugh at their own speed. He wasn't a ghost. Ghosts are leftovers. This was a boy whose body had stopped needing a body, but who was more himself than I'd ever seen him. Undiluted by allergies or growth spurts or the compromise of fitting into clothes. He saw me without stopping, and then he did stop, heels skidding the way they used to on the kitchen tile when I'd call him for dinner, and his mouth made the shape it always made when he was choosing between telling a joke and telling the truth. He went with truth. "Papa," he said, like the word had been waiting in his throat for 4 months and was relieved to finally get permission to come out. I didn't touch him, not because I didn't want to. I wanted to so badly my ribs bent, but because love comes with choreography and the first step is always, see him, let him be seen. Don't collapse the moment into possession just because you're scared it won't repeat. "Are you okay?" I asked, hating the question and asking it anyway because parenthood is a loop that doesn't apologize for its own predictability. "I'm fast," he said, grinning, and the grin was the same one he wore the day he beat me to the mailbox for the first time and acted like he hadn't been training for weeks. Then he laughed, and the sound didn't echo. It expanded, like laughter here doesn't bounce off surfaces, because there are no surfaces, only depth. Thamiel let us stand in that, until it became a shape my mind could hold without dropping the other shapes it was already holding. Truck keys, mortgage, the dentist appointment I kept forgetting to reschedule. "There are more rooms," the Guardian said gently. "He wants you to see one in particular." The second place was not a room at all. It was a sound that had learned architecture, bells that no hands had rung, footsteps in kitchens long after the meal was cleaned up, thank you said into hair barely audible, the kind you give when words feel too small but silence feels too large. "Hall of Small Echoes," Thamiel said, naming it the way you name a tool so apprentices know what to ask for. "Every tiny kindness reverberates here. He listens when he wants to hear you without eavesdropping on your grief." I heard my own voice, years younger, less tired, say take it the night he wanted the bigger slice of birthday cake. and I gave him the bigger slice without a lecture about fairness or appetites. It rang like a cathedral bell. I heard his voice say, "After you," to a neighbor's kid with a stutter, holding the door to the dollar store like he'd been taught doors are how you tell people they matter. It rang like good carpentry, clean, functional, beautiful without trying. "He is busy," the Guardian said, because I needed that sentence like a tourniquet needs pressure. "He is not bored. He's not waiting like a passenger at a gate. He is working in the way play always was work, learning, building, helping." The third location was a square made of reflections, buildings that showed you from different ages as you walked past. A fountain in the center ran upward, which should have bothered me but didn't. Up and down are just agreements, apparently, and this place had made different ones. Pigeons that looked less like birds and more like ideas with wings walked across cobblestones that hummed. "City of Remembering," Thamiel said. "He answers questions here when they come as images instead of demands. Your species thinks grief is only tears. He wants you to know it's also data. Memories stored in a place that doesn't have fire codes." Teo stood with two figures, a man who wore my father's hands, the knuckles, the scars from the lawnmower blade he tried to sharpen drunk, and a woman who wore my mother's laugh, the one that sounded like gravel in a good mood. He put his fingers to his lips and tried the whistle I'd never managed to teach him. 2 fingers, tongue behind teeth, blow. A sound came out, ridiculous and triumphant, and he looked at my father like, "I told you I could learn it." I laughed out loud, standing in the cemetery under a maple tree, because bodies are loyal to laughter even when they're busy breaking into pieces. "Take these home," Thamiel said, and without handing me anything physical, 3 things arrived in my attention the way you suddenly remember where you left your glasses. First, under the underside of your truck's glove box there's a strip of blue tape, it said. "Peel it." Inside, a note in his handwriting. "The word you'll need next Tuesday morning when waking up tries to take you hostage." I wanted to ask how a dead boy tapes notes under dashboards, but the question felt stupid in a place where fountains ran up. "Second," the Guardian continued, "the white stone 2 rows back, the one with the baseball glove carved into it. The penny you saw on top, heads facing east. That's how her father said 'I love you' without saying 'I love you.' Tell her. She's been waiting 12 years for anyone to know that detail without being told, because then it's real instead of just her hoping." "Third," it said, and the light around it organized itself into something that felt like a parent's hand on a shoulder, firm and kind. "Tonight at 3:17 a.m. your bedroom door will move against the rubber stopper 3 times. Do not jump out of bed thinking it's the dog or the wind. Say go ahead. He's practicing the corridor with you. He's learning how to visit without scaring you into a heart attack." I wanted to ask 1,000 engineers questions about how pennies and doors and tape and time are allowed to conspire without the machinery of physics, making a grinding sound that alerts the authorities. "Physics aren't insulted by love," Thamiel said, reading the knot in my forehead like a barcode. "The rules of the room stay. The rules of attention are wider than you were taught. He's not breaking anything. He's learning how to lean through the space between allowed and impossible. That space is where most prayers live anyway." "But he can't stay," I said, bracing for the sentence I knew was coming because nothing good in my life has ever let me keep the old arrangement of furniture. "Not like this," the Guardian agreed, and the honesty was kinder than a lie would have been. "Homesickness is allowed here. Clinging isn't. He needs you to learn the rituals that make visits into doors instead of anchors. Doors open and close. Anchors trap." "What rituals?" I asked, grateful for an assignment, because grief eats chores like good bread and I'd rather be useful than philosophical. 5, Thamiel said. "Simple, repeatable, domestic. The kind that work even when you don't feel mystical. 1. Open the bedroom door exactly 1 inch at 3:04 a.m., the minute you discovered the quiet had teeth. Say his name and add, 'Go ahead.' You're training both of you to move with instead of against. 2. Tape his word. You'll find it tonight, under a dinner plate. Once a week, eat a meal on that plate. When you wash it, read the word out loud. Mouth shapes teach muscles what the mind forgets. 3. Carry his rock, the one he swore was a meteorite. When panic tightens your chest, switch the rock from left pocket to right to left. Bodies trust bilateral motion. It's how soldiers calm down. It's how grief learns to sit. 4. Plant a sapling at the shop or your backyard with his word burned into a cedar tag and tied to the trunk. Invite others who've lost kids. Call it the Look Up Grove. Return each spring. Add a new sapling if someone new needs a tree. 5. Once a month, leave a penny heads east on a stone that isn't yours. Don't leave a note. Don't post it online. Love doesn't need an audience to be counted. I wrote them down in my head on the same clipboard I use for inventory, the one that tracks bar stock and weld wire and whether the apprentice remembered to lock the plasma cutter. Rituals, handle-shaped, portable, the kind you can do even when the theologians are busy arguing and you just need instructions. He wants you to stop calling it sudden, Thamiel added, as if delivering a line Teo had insisted on. Call it unwarned if you must. Sudden is a story about punishment. Unwarned is a story about you, and you're allowed to be unready without being wrong. I nodded, and the nod turned into a sob that I caught in my elbow like you catch a cough in church, and then I stopped trying to catch it and just let it go because we were past pretending and the cemetery wasn't judging. Proof, I said, after my breath returned with less sand in it. I'll do the rituals. I'll plant the tree. I'll open the door at 3:04, but I need something physical to anchor the part of me that hates miracles, because miracles feel like a con job when you're a welder. Truck, glove box, tape, word. Now, Thamiel repeated without impatience. Check it when you leave. 3 minutes from now in your time. We walked, or I walked and it accompanied, back to the ordinary plane of the cemetery where names were names and stones were stones and the jogger was long gone. The woman with the rosary was still on the bench, head down, beads clicking like a clock that runs on prayers. The baseball glovestone with the penny on top sat 2 rows behind my son's maple. I crouched down like I was tying a boot and looked closer, heads east. Lincoln's profile aimed at the sunrise like a compass. An older woman, maybe 70, with silver hair in a long braid, was kneeling 3 stones over, pulling weeds from the base of a marker I couldn't read from where I stood. She saw me looking at the penny and froze the way people freeze when they realize their private rituals are being witnessed. Your father, I asked, keeping my voice low the way you do in places where volume feels like trespassing. She nodded so carefully it looked like she was afraid the world might crack if she moved too fast. Heads east, I said, not as a question. Her mouth opened, her eyes filled. She cried in the way that isn't ugly or performative. It's irrigation. He's been very loud today, she said, voice shaking. He used to say that, heads east is how you face tomorrow. I thought I was the only one who remembered. You're not, I said, standing, knees complaining. He wanted you to know someone else speaks the language. She smiled through tears, and I walked back to my truck before the moment asked more of me than I had to give. At the truck, I opened the glove box. Insurance card, tire gauge, napkins from a drive-through I don't remember visiting. I pressed the top panel, feeling for a seam. It flexed. I wedged my fingers under and pulled the whole plastic shell loose. There, taped to the underside with blue painter's tape, was a slip of notebook paper folded once. 3-hole punch on the left margin. In his handwriting, messy and confident and perfect. Stay. I hated it. I wanted again. I wanted begin, or light, or anything that felt like motion instead of a command to hold still. It's not a sentence, Thamiel said, voice arriving without the figure appearing this time, just presence like warmth through a window. It's a practice. Stay doesn't mean don't move. It means don't disappear from yourself when the ache gusts. I folded the paper, tucked it in my wallet behind a photo from a summer that now feels like an afterglow, and drove to pick up his mother from physical therapy without crying until I hit the second red light. That night at exactly 3:17 a.m., the bedroom door moved against the rubber stopper 3 times. Not wind. I checked the window. Not the heater. It doesn't cycle until 4:30. A deliberate tap, tap, tap that respected hinges and physics while bending the conversation. I said, go ahead, my voice rough with sleep and effort, and the tap stopped and my breath did the thing it's learned to do. Lengthen, soften, accept that the room is bigger than I thought and I'm smaller than I feared, and both of those facts are okay. 3 weeks later, We built the look-up grove in the empty lot behind the fabrication shop. 6 families, 6 saplings, 6 cedar tags, burned with words using the torch I usually save for cutting holes in exhaust flanges. Stay. Again. Here. Light. Slow home. We said the names of the kids who aren't kids anymore because they learned a shortcut. We ate bread, passing a loaf around like communion but without the guilt. We told the stories that don't need sad music to hold a room, the rock under the pillowcase, the whistle that showed up in a dream, the dog who sleeps on a box that says, "Went ahead," in Sharpie on the side. At the cemetery, I started the habit. Once a month, find a stone with a baseball carved anywhere on it. Leave a penny heads east. No selfie, no hashtag. Twice I got caught and twice I got hugged by strangers who needed the alphabet as much as I did. At home, once a week, I eat dinner on the plate that has "Stay" taped underneath. Washing it afterward, saying the word out loud while my hands scrub, I can feel the part of me that wants to disappear when grief rushes in, get embarrassed by its own cowardice, and then come back like a kid who thought about running away and made it to the driveway before deciding home was scarier to lose than to stay in. I carry his rock in my left pocket most days, right pocket on bad days. Switching them is a tiny sacrament, and if anyone tries to convince you the sacred requires Latin or a collar, they're selling something I'm not buying. If you're standing over ground you would trade your lungs to unknow, here's exactly what to do tonight. Not because I think you need instructions, but because sometimes instructions are the kindest grammar. Open a door an inch at the time the quiet found you, whichever hour that was. Say the name you're afraid to say too much and add, "Go ahead." Tape a word that keeps you inside your own ribs under a dinner plate. Pick your own. Stay worked for me, but again might work for you. Leave small money facing the direction someone you miss loved. East for sunrise people, west for sunset people, north for the ones who loved snow. Plant something you can visit that is not marble. An herb, a tomato, a sapling with a tag. Carry weight small enough for pockets and switch sides when the ache tries to evacuate your chest. Ask out loud with your hands. Align the flowers, sweep around the stone, bring bread and leave it where birds vote. Because the guardians of the seam answer prayers that look like chores faster than they answer the speeches we practice in traffic. If you need proof and you're not ashamed of needing it, ask for anchors, not fireworks. You will get tape, pennies, doors that tap 3 times, words in handwriting you thought you'd never see again. Collect them. They're not coincidence, they're correspondence. If you want more maps from people who've walked the thin places and came back with dirt under their nails, subscribe. Not because algorithms are hungry, though they are, but because practice is easier when the room is full of other people who know how to widen without permission. Drop your anchors in the comments section below, the word under your plate, the sound your door made at an hour that doesn't explain itself, the penny your grandfather keeps turning towards sunrise even though he's been gone since you learned to drive. Someone scrolling at midnight in a cemetery parking lot needs your alphabet more than they need your theology. And if you see a figure made of braided starlight standing between rows of names, don't ask them who sent them or whether they're real. Ask for instructions. Then take the breath the wind hands you, look up the way the paper star told you to, and let the corridor widen until you remember you were always bigger than the envelope you've been trying to mail yourself in. The door was always there, you just needed someone to show you the hinges.